we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark Podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time watching, welcome. If not, welcome back. Like I always say, if you ever want to reach out to the podcast for any reason, let us know if you want to come out, be a guest on the episode, or let us know about a topic you want me to go over. I'm all ears. Hit us up in the comments, hit us up in the DMs. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. And if you're watching or listening anywhere else, follow along. And like I said, we always love to hear from you. So hit us up in the DMs at the Bigmark Pod or the Bigmark Podcast on Twitter or Instagram. So check us out there. And you guys are here to support the podcast by listening, by watching, by being here and being our faithful audience. If you ever wanted to go the extra mile and support, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/BigmarkPod. But again, thank you all for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. And you're already supporting us more than we could ever ask for here at the Bigmark Podcast. So again, thank you so much. I was always thinking about doing this, and it was funny even starting this podcast. I had to think about it. We haven't done that many at this point, but I was thinking about another podcast now that I'm co-hosting, which is called the Escarpment Labs Podcast. Let's just get right into it. Super excited to announce that it actually just came out this week. If you're listening to this, I guess it came out officially July 22nd. So on all platforms, check us out. I'm co-hosting it with the great Richard Priest. He is well known in the craft beer industry world, and he is also one of the owners of Escarpment Labs Yeast Laboratory. So him, Angus Ross, and Nate Ferguson are the three owners of the business that I work at, the yeast laboratory I work at, which has been awesome, and such a pleasure to work there. I'm coming up on 3 years working there as the sales coordinator, making sure all the orders come in and then all the orders ship out properly, and almost everywhere in between. I mean, there's a lab and production steps in there too. But again, I always like to say the alpha and omega, but if anyone knows anything about yeast labs, I shouldn't say omega, because Omega Yeast Labs are actually another liquid yeast producer. There's not that many in the entire world, and Escarpment Labs is happy to be one of the best in the world. We supply yeast that makes some of the best beer in the entire world, all over the world, whether it be craft breweries in Ontario, or larger breweries like Steam Whistle in Toronto, or even breweries as far as Kyoto, Japan. We're kind of all over the world. A lot of big breweries in the States are using us, and we're proud to be part of this amazing craft beer industry and be on the ingredient side. And I mean, I kind of talked to, I think I did an entire podcast on it, but talking about yeast and stuff, I can't help but talk about where I work. But again, it's a fantastic place that is an amazing mix of such intelligent people, such well-rounded, such experienced and knowledgeable people that are able to do things, from the production team that are on the grounds actually helping make the yeast itself. And when you're making yeast, it's, if you came into if you were, just found yourself in our production facility, you'd kind of look around and think that you were at a brewery. There's a bunch of tanks around. There's just no brew house. So what we're doing is essentially growing up the yeast and feeding it nutrient dense kind of mixture, if you will. I don't want to go into too many proprietary techniques here, but again, we're feeding the yeast, we're giving it an ideal environment for it to grow up nice and strong and then we can store it for a certain amount of time. Obviously, it being a live culture, can't really keep it forever, but we're trying to sell it and make sure that production is meeting that demand, which is a very, very tough job that is done by my compatriot, who also works very closely in this like fulfillment area where I'm at, where again we're at the ones taking in these orders and making sure that they're going out efficiently, because it being perishable, you kind of have to be on your toes. And we don't actually have any of our own trucks, so we're like dealing with the logistics of things and dealing with FedEx and dealing with GLS and dealing with all these couriers and everything, and making sure all these brewers get their beer, get their yeast on time to make their beer. Because again, that's the thing, right? Like on the ingredient side of things. So I had a lot of experience selling the finished beer to bars when I was at the last brewery I worked at, Sean and Ed's in Dundas. And that was a whole different ball game. Right now, you're dealing with bars, you're dealing with all these other breweries that are also trying to sell to those bars too. Whole different game, right? But actually selling the yeast to the breweries is very different, because they're the ones that need the ingredient. And liquid yeast is what we do. In fact, I'm actually wearing an Escarpment Labs shirt right now. This is Saison Maison, which is one of our yeast strains. It's a Saison strain, but all these different strains that we produce are going to be, have to kind of be like grown up to order in that sense. But when we are making sure that supply and demand, like I said, like my compatriot Chris Bunting is so on top of that, making sure that we don't overproduce the yeast because of its perishable nature. It might go bad, and we might not be able to sell that yeast. But again, there's meticulous quality control. There's all these different ways that we're making sure that our yeast that we're selling is top notch. So you have all these people that are involved with that just have that intense, immense knowledge on that. And then we have our entire lab side, which is not only doing our own QC and making sure that all the strains are the same. Like I said, I have the Saison Maison shirt, which we have all these different strains available that can make all these different types of beer, because each slightly different strain of yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, but all these like different, slightly different strains of yeast exhibit different flavor profiles. Also, the way that you treat the way that you treat the yeast and how you brew with it is ultimately gonna dictate how it's gonna taste. But given the right environment, a lot of these strains that we produce are going to give you a very predictable outcome. So because each strain kind of does a different thing, and we're almost, as brewers, beholden to what the yeast is going to do, we have to select a specific yeast that's going to be perfect for that brew. So again, the lab is making sure all that is genetically the same. We're making sure that there's no genetic drift, because as you make new yeast over and over again, if you're using that same culture, it's eventually going to change. So that's what brewers can do. They can repitch their yeast and use it over and over. But what we're doing is we're creating things basically from scratch every time and making sure that those genetics are perfect, getting things out of cryo, dealing with the university. They're dealing with outside QC stuff too, where there's breweries that will send in their finished product and be like, how's everything going here? So they're super busy there. But these are all these different moving pieces of the Escarpment Labs world. And it's just fascinating. Like I said, it's been an honor and privilege to be working with all these people. And unfortunately, some have come and gone and missed them all. And we've gone through changes too. But again, just a great place. And this knowledge and this understanding of the real, hops and malts are extremely important. Water profile is also very important when you're making beer. But yeast is kind of like really what's making the beer. And, all this knowledge and everything, we don't keep it under a bushel basket at Escarpment Labs. We want to get it out there. We want to push it out there. We want to get it out to people and make sure that they're brewers, especially, obviously, but like that knowledge is out there, that we're not just gatekeeping it and trying to, because the only way we're really going to improve as not only yeast producers, but as brewers, is by sharing this knowledge and trying to get better. And, we have this amazing thing on our website called our knowledge base, which is a series of blogs and articles and videos and all these different things that support all these questions and all these, all these cool new developments in yeast science and brewing science and technologies. So we have that, and that's been going for quite some time because, Escarpment Labs has been around since 2015. The boys started it, all went to Guelph together, and they started it in the back corner of Wellington Brewery in Guelph, and then all of a sudden morphed into this amazing company that's been around for 10 years now. And, so this knowledge base has been growing over this whole time. And there's also the breadth of knowledge that Nate Ferguson has as a professor of brewing science at Niagara College. And he is really great at being able to kind of like distill this knowledge and pass it on to people in a very digestible way. So he's been doing these videos, these a little bit longer form YouTube videos, which are great. You should check out Escarpment Labs YouTube, which is also on YouTube with me here. Hey, what's up, fellas? But check that out again if you're a brewer and you're interested in this kind of stuff. But Richard and myself were actually kind of talking about, this kind of cross-pollination, using my skills here from the Bigmark podcast and all my years in podcasting and knowing kind of how things work. And obviously Richard's knowledge and his own ideas and lectures and presentations that he's kind of put together too. We're trying to distill that into an even more digestible form, which is a straight up audio podcast, half an hour roughly, usually just a little bit over half an hour podcast. We're going to do them weekly, just get them out to people and hopefully have that kind of triple headed approach, Cerberus, if you will, which is one of our Belgian yeast strains. But this idea that, if you're able to sit down and really look into the nitty gritty things, you can check out the knowledge base. You can sit down and read if you have the time. If you're also sitting down, maybe you're not necessarily in the mood to read, but you want to throw on the YouTubes, check out Natrix on the ones and twos. And then you have the podcast as well. Is this like if you're on the floor brewing, fucking mashing out or, doing some transfers or something, you can put the podcast on and kind of listen to this stuff and then go to the other things. And it becomes this kind of, Pepe Sylvia type web of knowledge and understanding. And hopefully those three different things can start to make things click. Because that's how kind of everyone learns so differently, right? Like, and obviously we can't provide you hands-on knowledge, but hopefully with all these different approaches, things will start to click. So really excited doing it. Richard and I have a cool rapport. We kind of it's a lot more organized than the old Bigmark podcast. You know how I do here. We're kind of just riffing. We're sitting together in a room having a conversation. I know it's a little bit one way. Don't get me wrong, but the Escarpment Labs podcast is going to be very, it's going to be topic based. It's going to be kind of based on a knowledge-based article or vice versa or whatever. But again, this triple-head approach where the video and the podcast and the knowledge base is going to all kind of be the same theme. So we have a little bit more of a script that we're going to kind of be a little bit more beholden to, which, again, just keeps things a little bit more organized to just continue to pass on that knowledge, because that's what this is all about, right? Like, it's about understanding these different things. And I'm kind of coming from, I have a lot of experience in the brewing industry, but again, it's mostly selling the finished product and then selling the yeast itself. I have homebrewed a couple times, but I have no knowledge compared to some of the people that I work with, let alone Richard, who is just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to yeast and brewing science in general. So I'm kind of coming from a little bit more of a layman side of things and trying to ask questions and trying to, build on the script that we've created, but kind of go to places where I think brewers might be asking questions, or just places where I'm going to ask questions because, they might be stupid or they might be simple, but they might be questions you're afraid to ask, or might be questions that you forgot about, or, I remember thinking the same thing when I first started brewing, or whatever. And then Richard can also, semi-straight. But that's this kind of idea that I'm also hearing when I'm taking orders and fielding questions from brewers and home brewers alike from all over the world, mostly all over Canada and the United States, but still dealing with them and trying to figure out their needs. I can kind of understand where, there are some questions or people have more concerns, or there's certain aspects of brewing that people start to finally, hit a brick wall with, right? Or there's an issue with their brew. That's always one of the hardest things, is kind of troubleshooting people's brews, let alone, understanding, kind of how it's all supposed to go when it goes right, let alone how it's all supposed to go when it goes wrong, right? I mean, like that's one of the biggest things with understanding and knowledge when it comes to all these things, is that you have to know not only how it should go, but how it's going to go poorly, right? I mean, I feel like that's really a master of their craft. They're going to know all the ways things can go right, and they're going to know all the ways things can go wrong. They're not going to be surprised about how things, and that's been my experience with a lot of more experienced brewers. When something does go wrong, they're not necessarily surprised it went wrong. Yeah, it fucking sucks that something happened and maybe they lost some product, or they got to do another brew, or they got to stay longer for whatever. But not a lot of them are surprised, right? So again, not to say that there's a cynicism there, but that's just mastery of your craft, right? So it's really special. It's really interesting to see, brewing, and as I was going on to say earlier, brewing and Escarpment Labs, for that matter, is a very interesting place where, science and art kind of meet, right? Brewing and the art and the technique and the idea of imagining a flavor or going after a certain flavor profile and trying to capture that in your mind and bring that into reality. It's a very artistic approach. It's a very artistic endeavor. Let alone you can kind of also approach beer as a scientist, right? And a lot of giant breweries, they're always trying to make the same thing, because consistency is important with beer. You always want to make the same. If you have a SKU in the LCBO or a beer that you're famous for, you always want to make that same beer that if someone comes back to your brewery 10 years from now, it's going to taste the exact same. Or again, for the bigger breweries, if you buy a Coors Light in Vancouver, you want it to taste the same as a Coors Light in St. John's. So again, there's this whole thing where consistency is key. However, beer is made by yeast, which is a microorganism which kind of sometimes has a mind of its own. So again, it's all about providing the perfect environment for your yeast to grow, and then it's going to give you the same product, hopefully. But anything can happen. There's so many different variables. So hopefully we'll catch all of those different variables and all those different ins and outs on the Escarpment Lab podcast. We're keeping it easy. Check it out soon. We don't even have a theme song yet, but hopefully that's going to come soon. We're going to figure it out. We got a lot of great musicians too at Escarpment Labs. Again, great place, awesome people, great podcast. Go check it out. The first episode is out now whenever you're listening to this podcast. Hopefully there'll be more. So again, go listen to it. Thanks for listening to this one. We'll catch you all in the next one. Take it easy. Peace.